in the garden. The Garden of Eden, when God first created man and woman. Man and woman made the decision to leave the garden, to leave God, that they wanted to be their own gods. But at that moment, before that first sin, it tells us that God walked in the garden with Adam and Eve. It's kind of like human language of a way of saying that God was in communion with Adam and Eve. He was in fellowship. But they wanted to radically be independent of God. They didn't want to have God be the provider of all things for them. You know, I think it's kind of still the same human tendency that we have today. You know, we just feel like we have to fend for ourselves. We don't need God's help. And so they leave the garden as a banished because they chose to no longer be in communion and fellowship with God. The rest of the story is God's endless pursuit of bringing them back and bringing all humanity back. Now, there's a lot that happens in the book of Genesis, but I want to take us to the book of Exodus, because at this time in the book of Exodus, God has this people, the Hebrew people. They're going to be the instrument, the way in which God's going to bring all humanity back to themselves. They're going to be the first, the sign. And right now, God's people, his Hebrew people, are now enslaved in Egypt. He sends this person called Moses, where he first speaks to Moses on what's called Mount Sinai. It's where Moses sees God in that burning bush, where God gives Moses to direct him to go back to Egypt and to lead people out of Egypt back to this mountain, back to Mount Sinai. For what purpose? To worship. That is the initial reason to deliver the people out of Egypt. To take them out of Egypt, to take them to Mount Sinai so that they can worship the one true God. It's interesting, in the Hebrew, the word for worship and the word for service is the exact same word. So we're told numerous times that Hebrew people at that moment were serving Pharaoh or worshiping Pharaoh. But now God's plan is to take humanity and bring us back to communion with himself. The plan is to have them no longer serve or worship Pharaoh, but to come to Mount Sinai and to worship, to serve God, who is the one who truly cares about them. See, Pharaoh was enslaving them. He was making the work harder for them. Pharaoh didn't care about them. This one true God deeply cares about us. He knows that when we're back in communion with him, we are at our best. At our best. And so once Moses brings people back to Mount Sinai, then there's another experience where Moses goes back to the top of that mountain. Moses receives the law, he receives the Ten Commandments. Again, Moses is talking to God almost face to face. The glory of the Lord is on the top of that Mount Sinai. And then God has him construct this. And you go to that picture. Thank you, right here. This picture right over here. It's called a tabernacle. This tabernacle is meant to be a movable, a portable Mount Sinai. And that experience of God's presence on Mount Sinai is now going to travel with them in this structure called the tabernacle. And then later on in the history of the Hebrew people, this tabernacle is going to be changed into the temple. Will be a permanent structure in Jerusalem. But this is where it all begins. This is where God has this structure built to remind people of his ever-abiding presence with them. That when people question, when times are tough, when there's a famine, when there's an enemy approaching, they can move to the tabernacle and say, our help with the Lord is with us. The presence of God is with us. And this is the mode, the centrality of worship. When you worship God, you do it right here in this structure. Who has the pointer? David. Or Dave, sorry. Okay. Dave, point to the Holy of Holies. Let's see if he remembers my homily yesterday. Go ahead, Marcy. Holy of Holies. He was sleeping. Do you know where it is, Marcy? What are you doing here? You're ruining my homily. All right. It's the middle one. Yeah, there you go. Up, right there. That place right there is called the Holy of Holies. Inside the Holy of Holies is what's called the Ark of the Covenant. So if you're familiar with that 80s movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's Indiana Jones searching for the Ark of the Covenant. It walks around 580 BC. Okay, the story goes that the prophet Jeremiah knew that the enemy was approaching, so he takes the Ark of the Covenant and hides it in a cave, and we never see it again. More on that on August 15th, the Feast of the Assumption. Okay, but in that Holy of Holies, no one was allowed to enter. No one. Except for the high priest, once a year on the Day of Atonement. Okay, in fact, when he would enter in there and he would call upon the name of God, he would be attached with a rope. Okay, so that if he would happen to die in there, people then could drive him out. Okay, because no one was allowed in there. And then, right before the Ark, the Holy of Holies, is another holy place. This is where all the worship is done. Marcy highlighted that place. Okay, right there, this area here. That's where the worship takes place, and there's essentially three things. And again, this is why I'm saying this. I'm going to get to my point in just a second. Okay, there's three things in this. Marcy, can you see where the candle stand is? The light. Right there, okay? Lampstand. Always perpetually burning. Okay, just like what we have here. Okay, more on that in just a second. All right? In the middle, okay, is the altar of incense. I don't know if you can see that, Marcy. Right there. Yep, altar of incense. Okay, that's usually mixed with the offerings to make it smell good. Okay? Smoke that smells good. Yeah, I wonder, we still have that too. Okay? And then the last thing, and this is where I'm getting with all this. And we don't know much about this. At least I do. Maybe you do. But even in the seminary, I didn't know much about this. I'm doing a little study right now on the book of Leviticus because I'm a very important person, okay? But very fascinating, okay? But the bread of presence, Mercy, all right? This is where, down. You're at the Ark of the Covenant, down. Yep, right there, okay? It has a table with 12 loaves of bread on it representing 12 tribes of Israel. This is where I'm getting all this right here, okay? That bread was offered twice a day. Once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Okay? The priest would take part of the bread and burn it up with this incense that smells good. Okay? Like we do here sometimes. Alright? And the other portion was eaten by the priest. Only the priests were allowed in this area, no one else. Okay? However, the priest, as part of the ritual, would take that bread, proceed out of the tabernacle area. He will elevate the bread, and he'll say this: "Behold the love of God for you." Takes the bread, elevates it to the people, and says, "Behold the love of God for you." This bread of presence was to represent the presence and face of God. So right here, this bread was considered sacred. In fact, when we say the Our Father, we say, well, let's say our daily bread. I'm not talking about regular bread. Actually, in the Greek, it's more of a supernatural bread. Okay? Give us your food from heaven. Give us your bread from heaven. Okay? And so that bread of presence was meant to be a symbol of the face of God. That candlestand on the left side was always meant to illuminate that bread. And so it's this: when Jesus takes the bread and he gives thanks, and he gives it to his apostles and says, "Take this, all you and eat of it, for this is my body, which is given up for you." When Jesus in today's gospel says, "I am the bread of life, whoever eats this bread will live forever," he's just not pulling this out of thin air. He just didn't arbitrarily decide, I'm going to take this bread and I'm going to say, "This is my body." No, he's building on thousands of years of tradition that started with Moses and Mount Sinai and his tabernacle. Like I said before, remember the priest offers his bread daily, once in the morning and once in the evening. You want to take a guess during Jesus' time when the priest was doing this? What time of day? 3 o'clock. So imagine on Good Friday, as Jesus being lifted on the cross, the priest at the temple present His bread to people and saying, behold the love of God for you. Behold the love of God for you. But like I said, this whole structure was not entered by everybody. Only the priests who went through a ritual purification were allowed to enter into this structure. But today, on the Feast of Corpus Christi, and the feast we celebrate the body and blood and the Eucharist of Jesus Christ, today we take for granted, starting with myself, but many of us out here, take for granted that when we enter into this structure, we are entering into this symbol, into the Holy of Holies no one was allowed to enter into. We can enter into now. And we truly have this true bread that is greater than the bread of presence, this true bread that is greater than the manna that the people were fed in the desert, that the people considered that manna to be heavenly food. The Eucharist is the fulfillment and completion of everything that has been going for thousands of years. But the big and important difference is that God's presence is truly with us. And this is where now all the worship, not just the bread of presence, all the worship of the Old Testament is fulfilled in the Mass, where this is our worship of God now. This is where we give God our whole soul. But more importantly, this is where God gives us and feeds us literally Himself. This is my body which is given up for you. And if we sin and feel like we can't enter the presence of God, we're not holy, we then hear the words of the chalice, behold the blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for what? For the forgiveness of sin. To see the power of the love of God is even greater than our own sinfulness. The power of the cross, the Mass, the Eucharist, is the conqueror of our sins. Yet we're not really coming here, but yet also then, if we have a sincere and contrite heart, God makes us worthy of His power and His grace. But here, in this sanctuary, in this Holy of Holies, the real presence of God is here. And boy, sometimes we lose sight of that. I know there's times when we pass experiences where, maybe a priest, you had a priest that yelled at you about, talking in church. And maybe we go about it the best way, but the intention is that this is sacred space. This is space where God is present and we give everything of ourselves to God. All our problems, anxieties, and worship, we go down and meditate and hear those words, Jesus, I trust you. He's given us His whole self for our liberation, for our sake. This is why we do things like adoration here at the parish on Monday, morning, afternoon, and evening. The whole idea is to enter into a place where thousands of people for thousands of years are not even able to get into now. We can get into now and meditate and worship and to sit in quiet and peace, but also the power of God. The Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith, it's the pinnacle of our faith. This is why we take things like home and Mass very seriously. Because if we're not going to worship here, then we're going to worship somewhere else. There's going to be something else in one's life that they're going to give themselves entirely to. But for us, every Sunday, every Saturday evening, every first Sundays, every day, our worship of giving over our lives to God, placing it in His hands of God, more importantly, than to give us everything that we need. The real presence, the real true bread presence, the face of God. We have the opportunity to be in it right here, right now. Thank God for that. May God bless you.